Hi everybody and welcome to another gear review. This time it's the Nanlite Forza 200. So if you can't afford their 300, this is a nice low cost alternative. Now it outputs more than a 575 HMI Fresnel and it runs really quiet. So let's take a look. Alright, so I'm going to start off this review by assuming that you know that Nanlite has a 300 and a 500 watt Forza as well as this 200. So why would you buy the 200? So let's have a look through. So the 200 first off is about 1/3 cheaper than the 300. So for a lot of you that makes it very affordable. Alright, so let's have a look quickly at the differences. So I don't have a 300 to show you, but this is the 500. So that gives you an idea of the size difference. Now the size difference isn't that much, but I'll give you the tip. The 500's way heavier because it's got a lot of heatsink in it. So it's a very lightweight unit. Now, in terms of other improvements they've done to the design of this, something that a lot of you Nanlite users are going to love is they've put a protective shield over the COB. Okay, so prior to that, all we had was like a silicone cover, and when a moth lands on it, it burns. They've got what I'm guessing is a glass or a high heat resistant plastic over the front of that. Okay, so that's improvement number one. The next improvement they've done is in the lock-off, they've put a umbrella mount. This with a diffusion umbrella would be a fantastic fast soft light to set up, and very affordable and packed down very well. So that's something that obviously they've been asked to do. Now with the reflector on, the unit comes in at about as bright as a 575 HMI Fresnel, a bit brighter, maybe about 20% brighter. So it does have quite a bit of firepower. All right, so let's have a look at the controller. This is where the main difference is. The controller, which I call the podium because it looks like a podium that you'd stand behind if you're doing a lecture, is about half the size. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar with the Nanlite controller boxes, you remove the power supply and you can put your battery in here. So this unit runs off one battery. So that might be a huge advantage for a lot of people who are interested in the 300 or the 500, but you know, having two batteries to run a light could be a bit of a limitation for you. So this unit will run at full power off a 26 volt battery. Okay, no problem at all, full power. But it will also run at a reduced capacity off a 14.4 or a 14.8 volt battery. So if you're running a smaller voltage battery, the unit will only draw 120 watts. So that's about 60% the power draw. However, when I ran a meter over it, it was not running at 60% the brightness of full power, it was running at 72% the brightness. So there's only a 28% power loss if you're running off a 14.8 volt. So you might be wondering, why have they done that? Well, a 200 watt power draw would be a substantial amount of power to pull off a single 14.8 or 14.4 volt V-lock. Now it's not impossible, you can get batteries to do it, this one can do it, but you're looking at a large amount of money. And here's the tip for you as somebody who owned 200 watt lights that ran off a single battery. Your batteries can do it pretty well for the first couple of years, and then after that the batteries really struggle. Right, so let's get back to talking about the power supply. The next big difference is, because it's only a 200 watt power supply, the power supply is totally passively cooled. So there's no cooling fans in this unit anymore. This runs absolutely silent. So that might have been a bit of a negative for some of you with the 300 and 500. Now let's get on to the head. The head, only having a 200 watt LED, doesn't need as much cooling as the 300 or the 500. So this also has a way quieter fan. Okay, so to give you an idea of the audio, I'm not going to say anything for a bit. The light is currently turned off, and then I'll turn it on so you can hear the difference. Okay, so the light is running at full power, 100% brightness, with the fan running at full speed. The fan only has two speeds, full speed and off. Okay, now let's have a listen to the controller. Now, one thing I'd like to point out, my camera has automatic gain control on it. So when I'm not talking, the sound does boost up. So Look, I'm standing right next to it talking, and you probably can't hear the fans at all. So it'll be perfectly fine for an interview situation. So it's just as well that they've made it quiet, because the unit also has a fan off mode. So you can turn the fan off, but the brightness reduces. Now with the fan off mode, the light only runs at 15% brightness, which is a little bit silly. Now, if you own a Forza 300 or a Forza 500, you're going to be surprised to hear that they've managed to make the menu system even easier to operate. Now, when I first got this unit, I was playing with it and thinking, this is really easy to use. What's the difference between this and the Forza 500? The main difference is the daylight button. So you can be in the effects mode, for example, and then if you want to leave the effects and just go back to operating it as a normal light, you just press the daylight button. Or you can be buried deep in the menu, just press the daylight button, and you're out of there, you're back to normal light operation. The other thing that's different is there's no trigger button for the effects. If you've got an effect that requires manual triggering, you just press the black button. And the display has real clear instructions as to how to run the effects. Now the next thing that's different on the controls is the blue button can now be pressed in. So you can dial in a brightness and press the blue button and the light will go to 0 brightness. Press it again and it will go back to where it was. Now in terms of other improvements between this and the previous versions, the only other improvement I can find is a brief reference in the instruction manual to this having Bluetooth connectivity. Now I couldn't find any Bluetooth on-off in the menu, and I couldn't find any phone apps that run off Bluetooth. So I'm guessing this is something that's going to be enabled into the future. Alright, so let's start off the review by talking about what you get for your money and how much it costs. Alright, so this thing's going to sell for about $700 US, which is about 1,200 Australian dollars. So at that price point, I think they're aiming to take on the 120D market. So what do you get? Well, you get the light, of course. It comes with a dish, a Bowens mount dish. Now this thing is Bowens mount compatible. So you've got a huge range of modifiers that you can put onto it. You also get the controller box. You get the power supply, which is on the back of the controller box, and you get this handy little clamp that you can put the controller box onto a stand with. Now all of this comes in a kit bag. Now the kit bag is surprisingly big for such a little light, but there's room in this for all of the kit that I've mentioned, plus a spare compartment here that you can fit 2 high capacity V-Lock batteries into. Okay, before we get into operating it, there's something I forgot to mention. The unit also comes with a 2.5 meter head lead cable. Now that's the same head lead cable as the Forza 500 uses. You can also get an optional 5 meter cable if you want to do a bit more rigging with it. All right, let's get into using this thing. So I'll just get my B camera rolling here. You've got a massive on-off switch on the side. So after you hit that, it does take a little bit of time to boot. Okay, now it's pretty straightforward. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be using this in the daylight mode. So your blue button basically assigns your brightness. Now the thing dims in 1% increments, and you can select a value and then toggle between 0 and that value by pressing the blue button. Okay, let's go along. The next thing across is your effects menu. All right, so the black button selects what it is you're toggling. Let me just get that into focus. Okay, and the blue button selects selects the changes. So let's go to have a look at intensity loop. All right, now if I want to change the minimum dim on the intensity loop, for example, I just select that by moving the black knob, and now I can adjust that. If I want to select the maximum brightness, I can do that by moving the black knob. Then the blue knob sets my levels. Okay, so the black knob sets what it is you're changing, and the blue knob changes the values on that. Okay, so if I want to change the effect, I scroll back up to the effect setting, and then I use the blue knob to go through. Okay, so we've got flash, other effects we've got pulse. Now in all of these, you can select the intervals, so how many pulses a minute. So let's speed that up maybe. Okay, and we can slow it down. All right, so really straightforward, quite easy to use. I want to change the effect again, I just scroll the black button up to the effect, and then I use the blue knob to change the effect. So we've got Storm Manual. Now if you've got something that needs manual triggering like Storm Manual, you just press the black button and the storm effect will happen. Okay, so very simple to use. TV effect, paparazzi effect, candle fire. Your candle fire doesn't make much sense on a daylight unit, but if you put a CTO gel over that, it'd probably be okay. Let's continue scrolling through the effects. Whoops, wrong button. So blue button for that. Bad bulb, I'll skip that because that gives people headaches. Fireworks, yeah, on a monocolor light, fireworks is a bit strange, I reckon. And you got explosion, auto, explosion manual, so you press the blue button to trigger the explosion effect. So 3, 2, 1, bang. Okay, and what have we got? Welding. Okay, now welding's paused. Okay, so let's scroll down. Pause on, and we can select pause on, pause off. So using the blue button to select, so I can start the effect now. Okay, and then turn the effect off. So you got quite a bit of control. So the next thing we'll go through is the menu. So let's have a look at that. Rotate screen, let's not play with that. Next thing down is DMX address. I haven't been explaining with the Forza or the Nanlite series the DMX address option. Now that's not just DMX or address. As you can see here, it says address/DMX. This option is for your wireless remote control, so you can get a little wireless remote control to operate it. It's for the phone app control and for your physical DMX connection. All right, so it's worth pointing out at this point that the unit does have DMX on the side, DMX in and out. The next option is fan on off. Now it is worth pointing out here that if you turn the fans off, the light will drop to 15% intensity. Okay, now if you turn the fans back on from here, the light will remain at 15% intensity until you press the daylight button and then turn the light up manually. Now the next thing that's nice with the Nanlites is if you go back to the menu system, it's back to where you previously were. So you can exit the menu system, have a look at what you're doing with the light, have a play, then go back into the menu system and it goes back to the menu where you left off. It's the same with the effects, so that's pretty cool. Screen settings is the next option. That's just things like your brightness. Now the backlight, you can see this light's blue. Okay, so that's what it means by backlight. Language, don't mess with that because you'll be trying to figure out how to get from Cantonese back into English. And version, so you can read your firmware version number because this unit is firmware updatable via a USB port. And the last thing that's on here is keypad lock. Hold down the keypad lock. Okay, and now if I accidentally hit my controls, they're not going to change. If I want to unlock the keypad lock, I just hold the keypad lock down. And we're back to operation. So very, very simple to use, very straightforward. Now let's go through the remote control options for this unit, and currently you have 3 options. So option number 1 and the cheapest option is these little remote controls. Now you can use Nanlite, Nangguan or Ledgo branded controllers. With this unit you can dim the light in 1% increments, and the controller can control up to 512 individual fixtures or individual channels. So on this controller, every channel that you select is a complete light. Now, there is one limitation with these little remotes. That is, you can set the brightness, but you can't actually turn the light off via the remote. So for example, you couldn't set a brightness level on the light and then turn it on via the remote. So that's not a possibility. Now, if you want to run the light off a mobile phone app, with the current mobile phone app, you need to have this Wi-Fi bridge. So the mobile phone app is free, but you need to have this little bridge in between. This costs about $300 US, and I can't justify buying this because the app needs a little bit of work in it. Hopefully they'll sort the app out soon, and when they do that, then this will definitely be worth buying. So if you're looking to buy the Android app, I can't speak for the iPhone app, I don't have an iPhone, but if you're looking to buy the Android app, download it for free, just have a play with it, then do a save, and then have a play with it again and save, and if it crashes, they haven't fixed the app. If it doesn't crash, they've fixed the app, and this is well worth the investment because it's got the potential to be a fantastic app. The unit also has Bluetooth connectivity, but that must be something that's getting turned on later. And the last option for remote controlling this unit is professional DMX. Okay, now let's talk about the DMX, and this is the thing I still can't get my head around. $700 US, and it comes with fully fledged professional operating DMX. Now you can operate everything that this thing can do as a light via the DMX. So that's your special effects. You can select your parameters on your special effects, all of that via DMX operation. Now, in the instruction manual is a fully detailed breakdown of the DMX programming. So you could make your own profile if you're running sophisticated software. However, if you're not, it is quite easy to figure out how the unit works by having your DMX controller close to the light when you initially use it. So let me fire up my second camera and we'll have a look. Okay, now I've got my Exolux controller set up to a basic 5-channel profile. Now, regardless of whether you're in a special effects mode or just in normal light operating mode, channel 1 is always your master brightness. Now I have channel 2 selected, and channel 2 will toggle on your special effects and select the special effect you want. So as I move that slider upwards, we can select our special effects. So let's go something a bit more friendlier. Let's go pulse. Okay, now on the pulse there, the dimmer up the top, this one here, dimmer 100%, that's operated via the master control, which is channel 1. So I'm just going to play with that. Okay, and as you can see there, that's dimming the level. Now, pulses per minute, that would be the next option that we can adjust. Okay, so you have a look on the controller. Channel 1 is master brightness. Channel 2 selects what effect you're running. Channel 3 is the next option. So I'm going to select channel 3 and then start adjusting that. So that will increase our pulse rate. So have a look there. Now let's select an effect that's a bit more fun. Let's select, say, Storm Manual. Okay. Now Storm Manual I can trigger via channel 3 on the remote. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, flash. 3, 2, 1, flash. Now I used this on a music clip recently where we had multiple Forzas set up going through smoke, and I was using them for a lightning effect using my Exolux controller and having all the lights on the same frequency. So that's the DMX in a nutshell. If you get your controller close to the display, you can quickly figure out how to set it up and get complicated functions running with the unit. Now there is one thing I don't like with the unit, so I'm just going to show here. I'll just put it back to being a normal light. So I've got it set to 100%. Let's say my director of photography comes along, he can actually change the brightness on the controller here. Okay, so that's one thing I don't like is in DMX mode, the manual controller isn't locked out, so someone can make changes on the box that of course isn't on your console. So that can lead to confusion. Now let's see how well this thing responds to DMX commands. Now it's worth pointing out it is not designed to be a studio light, it's designed to be a location light, and it's designed to run off a single V-mount battery. So running a light like this off a single V-mount battery going from 0 to 100% instant would slam the cells. It would actually do damage to your batteries, and that would not be good battery maintenance. So bear that in mind when we go through the test. All right, so let's start off with the light at 100% brightness, and we're going to put it to an instant black command and see how long it takes. In 3, 2, 1, black. Okay, now we're going to go the other way up to 100 in 3, 2, 1, punch. Okay, so as you can see there, a little bit slow on the ups and downs. So if you're going to try and do any fading over DMX, if you go any less than 1¼ seconds, you're going to catch the battery management. You won't be in control. All right, so now let's go to the unit by itself, and we'll put in a 2½ second fade to black in 3, 2, 1, go. So let's have a look at the smoothness. Now, to my eye, it's a little bit jerky, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that on camera, it's going to look okay. All right, now let's stretch that out to a 5-second fade, and in 3, 2, 1, start. And now fading up in 3, 2, 1, start. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%. All right, so the last thing to point out before we go into the technical stats is that this unit does have a slightly smaller COB than the 300 and the 500. So that shows up a little bit in the Fresnel attachments. So while these Fresnel attachments are still pretty good, And with the Fresnel on, this is easily a 575 HMI Fresnel replacement. The beam is not as even as it used to be with the Forza 300 or the Forza 500. So it's the beam is a little bit duller in the center. You've got to really look for it to see it, but it is a fraction duller in there. But yeah, if you're used to using, say, an M18 or something like that, you're going to think this is fantastic. Now, the flood spot is quite incredible on these. It does seem to spot a little bit tighter. So let's have a look. All right, let's plow through the boring stats. Now, the maximum AC power draw I recorded on this unit was 209.5 watts. Now let's talk about brightness. So bear in mind with the brightness that the light runs at full power off AC power or a 26 volt battery. If you're running it off a 14.4 or a 14.8 volt battery, it'll only run at 120 watt power draw. So I've taken readings for both. Okay, so for the unit running at full power, with no modifier on it at a distance of 3 meters, it was spitting out 1,110 lux, and with the dish on, that jumps up to 3,660 lux. Now with the unit running at a 120 watt power draw off a 14.8 volt battery, it was pulling with no modifier 796 lux, and with the dish on, that jumps to 2,600 lux. With the unit running at 100% brightness, with a no modifier, I recorded 5,470 Kelvin with a TLCI score of 98. The average CRI score was 96.9 and only R12 is below 90%. TM30 color vector results suggest a more realistic score would be 93% color render with 100% saturation. Here is the wavelength analysis. And the delta UV is out by plus 0.0014, which makes the light slightly green to the equivalent of half of a 1/8 correction gel. Now with the light running at 100% brightness with the dish, I got 5,404 Kelvin with a TLCI score of 98. The average CRI was up slightly higher at 97.3%, and the TM30 color vector analysis remained unchanged with 93% color render and 100% saturation. There was very little change in the wavelength analysis, and the delta UV point was much healthier at plus 0.0008 DUV, which means the light has a slightly imperceivable hue shift towards green. Next, I tested the light at 50% brightness to see if there's any shift in color temperature. The Kelvin remained pretty much identical. It dropped 3 degrees Kelvin. That could be my meter. The TLCI score was identical. The CRI scores were pretty much identical. TM30 color vector testing noticed a 1% drop in color render and in color saturation, and the delta UV point had moved slightly. So it had gone to 0.0015, which is the equivalent of about a 1/2 of a 1/8 gel correction. The following results are for the unit running off a 14.8 volt V-Lock battery. So first with no modifier. I got 5,468 Kelvin with a TLCI score of 98. The CRI scores remained about the same at 96.7. TM30 color vector testing reveals a color render score of 92% with 99% saturation, which is about 1% lower than the light running at full power. The wavelength analysis is pretty much identical, and the delta UV is out by plus 0.0023, which means the light is ever so slightly green to about the equivalent of a 1/8 correction gel. Now with the dish on, I got a color score of 5,413 Kelvin with a TLCI of 98%. The CRI was 97.1, and TM30 color vector testing reveals a more accurate score would be 92% color render with 99% color saturation. Here is the wavelength analysis. And white point mapping reveals that the light is ever so slightly green by about the equivalent of a 1/8 correction gel with a delta UV score of 0.0020. All right, that's another review done. On to the next one. I'll hopefully see you next week on Gaffer and Gear.